You need to join our HOA right now or face the consequences. That was the chilling message our unhinged neighbor Helen delivered, just 3 days after we moved into our new home. She was relentless. From day one, this woman seemed determined to make our lives miserably, fabricating bogus violations, harassing us endlessly, all because my wife and I refused to play along with her warped power games. But Helen made a critical mistake when she called the police with a bunch of phony accusations. A broken bar, and my wife quietly flashed her federal ID. The moment Helen saw it, all the color drained from her face. She froze like she'd just seen a ghost. What Helen didn't realize was that she'd picked the absolute worst possible person to mess with. The karma that came for her. Poetic justice. Drop a comment and let me know where you're tuning in from. So, here's how it all began to me. Michael. And my wife, Judy. Yes, those are our real names, because honestly, this whole saga is too outrageous to make up. I'm 35, and I've been a freelance graphic designer for about 8 years. After getting ripped off by a shady contractor back in 2019, I lost $8 on a fake repair job. I've been extra cautious when it comes to anything house related. That's why our place is decked out with cameras everywhere, front, back, even the garage. My neighbors probably think I'm running a low-budget spy agency, but hey, better paranoid than broke. Judy, my wife, is 38 and works for the federal government tracking down insurance fraud. But here's the kicker: she wasn't exactly working when we moved. She was on suspension, officially under investigation for being a little broken bar overzealous on a previous case. And not just a slap on the wrist kind of suspension, we're talking full review. Possible termination. If she got caught getting involved in any active case, it would be career over, fired, blacklisted, done. I didn't know any of this when we moved. She just told me she was taking a much-needed break to recharge. In hindsight, maybe I should have been suspicious when my ultra-driven, never-stop-working wife suddenly wanted to escape to a quiet suburb. The house? Gorgeous. A dream home. Manicured lawns, white fences, a total postcard stuff. We'd been searching for months, and this place felt like we struck gold. Judy, in particular, seemed desperate to get out of Washington, D.C., but I just assumed she was tired of the grind. Turns out, she was fleeing a slow-moving professional collapse. But we'll get to that later. On day 3, I was in the garage unpacking boxes when I heard a sugary sweet voice from the driveway. "Hello there, welcome to Pine Valley." I turned around, and there she was, Helen Thompson, late 60s, silver hair styled like she walked out of a salon commercial, and a smile that made my skin crawl. She held a fancy-looking welcome basket in one hand and what looked suspiciously like official documents in the other. Instant red flag. But I tried to be polite. She introduced herself as the president of the HOA and immediately started laying out a thick folder of paperwork like she was closing a mortgage deal. "This is your membership agreement and the fee schedule," she said, spreading the documents across my workbench. "It's just $200 a month. Covers landscaping, security, general upkeep." As I skimmed through, alarm bells went off. We hadn't seen a single word about HOA obligations in our purchase contract, and I read that thing like a hawk after what happened in 2019. I told her, we didn't see any HOA stuff in the documents we signed. Her smile tightened, that look people get when they're trying to stay polite, but something dark starts slipping through. "Oh, it's voluntary," she said, with the kind of tone that told me it was anything but. "But all the good neighbors are members. You do want to fit in a broken bar, don't you?" The way she said good neighbors, it was a velvet-wrapped threat. Just then, Judy came outside to see what was happening, and that's when things turned truly bizarre. Helen started firing off these hyper-personal questions. "What's your income? What do you two do for work? What's your insurance provider? How much are your policy limits?" I'm thinking, a lady, we've known you for 5 minutes. Why are you interrogating us like you are underwriting a loan? Then she pulled out her phone, claimed she wanted a few selfies with the new neighbors. But I caught her reflection in the hallway mirror. She was snapping photos inside our house. Red flag number 2. And it was a big one. Then she asked Judy about her job, and I swear, my wife went ghost white, hands trembling. "I just work in an office," she mumbled, then changed the subject as fast as possible. It shook me. I've never seen Judy look scared. She's tough as cold, even, when she needs to be. Whatever Helen asked, it hit a nerve I didn't know was there. When Helen finally left after hanging around for nearly 45 minutes, I asked Judy what the hell that was about. "Just neighbor stuff," she said, still visibly shaken. "That woman creeps me out." I agreed, but there was more to it. Her reaction wasn't normal. It was fear, real fear, and I didn't understand I'd a broken bar yet. What I didn't know was that Helen wasted no time digging into our lives the moment she got home. She found out I was a freelance designer with a fraud historia. Interesting, but harmless. Judy's situation? That was harder to pin down. Her records had been sanitized after the disciplinary action at her job. All Helen could find was generic information: federal employee, legal department. So, Helen assumed she was dealing with some desk jockey, maybe with a little fraud exposure, someone she could manipulate. She had no idea what kind of hornet's nest she had just kicked. But Judy, she wasn't about to sit around feeling victimized. From the very first day, she started compiling evidence, snapped a photo of Helen's business card, logged her license plate, created a secure, encrypted timeline on her laptop. She even messaged an old contact. Hypothetical: if someone's asking way too many questions about insurance coverage, what would you think? Officially, Judy couldn't act, but her instincts were on full alert and they were screaming that something about Helen wasn't right. Then, things escalated. About 2 weeks after we settled in, I was getting ready for the day when a loud crash jolted me out of my routine. I rushed outside and our mailbox was completely obliterated. A delivery truck had ends here. You ready for the next section? When you are. A delivery truck had apparently clipped our mailbox, knocking it to pieces. I barely had time to take in what happened when Helen suddenly appeared, a phone in hand, already recording. "Oh my goodness, are you alright?" she chirped. "I saw the whole thing happen. Don't worry, I filmed everything for your insurance claim." She wasn't just recording, she had a fully completed insurance form in hand, complete with itemized damage estimates. Who has something like that ready to go within 5 minutes? That was the moment Judy's eyes narrowed. I recognized the look immediately. She knew exactly what we were looking at. This wasn't an accident. It was a textbook case of staged insurance fraud, something she's prosecuted hundreds of times before, but she couldn't do a thing about it. Getting involved, even unofficially, would violate the terms of her suspension and cost her everything. So there she stood, silently watching a federal crime unfold in our own driveway, powerless to intervene. About a month later, we got back from dinner to find the garage flooded. Our sprinkler system had somehow gone haywire while we were out, and just like clockwork, there was Helen at this time with a commercial-grade shop vac and a stack of business cards for water damage restoration. "This kind of leak can lead to mold," she warned with false concern. "Very hazardous to your health. Insurance will definitely cover these. Just file the claim." Only this time, her approach was pushier. She wasn't suggesting a claim, she was practically demanding one. Now my scam senses were on full alert. Everything about this felt manufactured. Then came the breaking point. One morning, I walked out to find my car had been vandalized. Every panel had been keyed, deep gouges all over. We're talking thousands in damage. And wouldn't you know it, there was Helen, already outside at 6 in the morning with a DSLR camera, snapping away like she was documenting evidence for a trial. What struck me wasn't just her presence, it was the look in her eyes. She looked excited by the destruction. She practically glowed while talking about how much money insurance might pay out. That's when it finally clicked. This wasn't misfortune, it was a setup. Every single incident had followed the same pattern. Sudden damage, perfect timing, Helen showing up like a helpful neighbor with ready-made paperwork and shady contractor referrals, and those creepy selfies she took on our first day. I now realized she was casing the inside of our home. But even then, I didn't know the full scope. Unbeknownst to Helen, someone else had been quietly watching her, and they were about to uncover something massive. By this point, Helen had dropped the pleasant neighbor act completely. She went full intimidation mode. It was like dealing with a completely different persona, someone who had perfected the art of psychological pressure. While I tried to figure out how my suburban dream had turned into a nightmare, Judy was working in the shadows like the seasoned agent I saw, even if she wasn't supposed to be doing any work. She couldn't just stand by and watch crimes take place right outside our front door, so she started building a Kazi quietly, carefully. She used encrypted messaging apps to consult her old contacts at the dojo, always phrasing things as hypotheticals. She tapped into federal databases under the guise of researching future trends in insurance fraud, and she compiled a meticulous case file: photos, incident logs, timestamps, financial leads, the whole works. And then as she cracked it, Helen wasn't just orchestrating scams in our neighborhood. She had multiple fake companies set up across several areas, all tied into a large-scale operation. She was running a full-blown fraud ring. Ironically, my paranoia from being conned back in 2019 turned out to be a huge asset. My hidden security cams captured every interaction we had with Helen. I began mapping out all the neighborhood accidents, and a pattern emerged: 8 homes hit in just 6 months. Same types of damage, same referrals, same insurance filings, always Helen at the center of it. That's when Carlos, a neighbor a few houses down, approached me. He was former Army intelligence and had that calm, serious look in his eye that told me he didn't play around. "Dude," he said, "I used to run surveillance ops overseas. I know a recon mission when I see one. She's scoped out your house 3 times under different pretenses." He told me she pulled the same routine on his mother to gain her trust, then fleeced her for $50,000 in fake repair claims. When his mom started to push back, Helen threatened to have her previous claims investigated for fraud if she caused problems. That's when everything clicked into place. Helen wasn't some nosy HOA president. She was running a criminal empire built on fraud and intimidation. And Judy and I, we were just her latest marks. But we weren't cooperating. We weren't filing the claims. We were asking questions, pushing back. And that's when Helen escalated. One night, we came home to find Judy's home office completely destroyed. Her laptop smashed, sensitive documents strewn across the floor, total chaos, easily over $15,000 in damage. The next morning, Helen was predictably awaiting outside with a folder full of paperwork. "Oh no, this is awful," she said, almost gleeful. "Definitely looks like a break-in. You should file a comprehensive claim immediately. I know a guy who can help with prevention going forward." But something had changed. Her fake concern was barely veiled. She wasn't even hiding her excitement over the insurance angle anymore. Judy looked at the wreckage of her Afrasia, the destroyed files, the shattered computer, and something inside her snapped. She exploded. "You think you are clever?" she screamed. "You have no idea who you are dealing with." I'd never seen my wife lose control like that. She was usually calm, calculated, but now, she was furious. And honestly, it scared me. Helen just smirked. "Oh, you, the little government worker, wants to get tough?" she sneered. "Go ahead, make your threats. I've got friends on the force. No one's going to believe you." "She's just some disgruntled government worker already in hot water," Helen sneered, her words laced with contempt. And that's when it hit me. Helen knew something about Judy's situation that I didn't. After Helen finally left, I turned to Judy and asked, "What haven't you told me?" That's when she broke down. All of it came pouring out. Her last case had gone south badly. She pushed too hard trying to bring down a large fraud operation, crossed a few ethical lines, bent the rules too far. It blew up in her face, and now she was under formal investigation on full suspension. If she interfered in any case, even unofficially, her career would be over in a flash. Fired, blacklisted, done. "I know exactly what Helen's doing," she sobbed, "but if I get involved, I'm finished. And I can't do anything." I looked at her, this brilliant, relentless woman who spent her life chasing down con artists and criminals. And now she was helpless, because doing the right thing could cost her everything. "You really think I married you for your job title?" I told her. "I married you because you never back down from what's right. Forget the job. Let's take this woman down." At this point, her career wasn't my concern. Protecting my wife and exposing Helen's operation was. But Helen, she must have overheard part of our conversation through the window, because yes, she was eavesdropping now, and she panicked. She assumed Judy was building a federal case against her. Technically, she wasn't wrong. So Helen decided to go on the offensive. Her plan? Destroy us before we could expose her. She kicked off a smear campaign in the neighborhood, held emergency home meetings behind our backs, spread lies that we were troublemakers bringing criminal activity into the community. She even pulled strings with one of her dirty cop buddies to run background checks on us. That explained a lot of her confidence, her access, her immunity. She had law enforcement contacts helping her cover her tracks. Her strategy was simple: paint us as the criminals so that if we ever tried to report her, no one would believe a word we said. But thankfully, not everyone was fooled. Carlos, our former Army intelligence Navarro, quietly started reaching out to others. He found several families who'd also been threatened into silence by Helen. Same patterns, same fear, but with Carlos backing them, people started to speak up. He was forming a resistance in neighbors who had all been victimized by Helen and her criminal network, and they were ready to fight back. Then Helen made her biggest mistake. She called her cop contact again, clearly rattled, trying to speed up whatever dirty plan she had brewing. What she didn't know, my over-the-top security setup had captured the entire phone call through an open window. I had the whole thing on tape. Her voice, clear as day. I need you to arrest them. Doesn't matter for what, just find something. They're getting too close. Boom. That was it, a literal recording of her trying to frame us. When I played it for Judy, something inside her shifted. The fear, the hesitation, all of it vanished. Her eyes hardened. The federal prosecutor she used to be, she was back. We've passed the point of no return, she said, her voice low and calm. She's going to bury us unless we take her down first. This wasn't about survival anymore, it was war. And Helen Thompson had just made the fatal error of going up against a federal prosecutor with nothing left to lose. What we didn't know then was that Helen had already set her most dangerous plan in motion. Within 24 hours, one of us might not even be free to fight back. What happened next was nothing short of madness. Helen went nuclear. This wasn't petty harassment anymore, this was full-scale psychological warfare. She unleashed tactics so manipulative, so calculated, it was clear she'd been using them for years to dominate and terrorize entire communities. First came the mailbox. One morning we found a dead rodent inside, accompanied by a twisted anonymous note. Of course, Helen played the innocent neighbor, acting horrified. Then she called the police herself, claiming she was the one being harassed. Animal cruelty, threats, fear for her safety. She positioned herself as the hero while subtly framing us as the villains. The very next morning, all 4 of our car tires were slashed, every single one, and wouldn't you know it, Helen was out front bright and early with a tow truck and an insurance rep already waiting. Hate crime, she whispered, but don't worry. Comprehensive coverage will handle it. She had all the solutions lined up. Every solution just happened to involve big insurance payouts in her shady network. But it didn't stop there. For a full week, our house was egged every single night. No one caught, no fingerprints. The attacks were timed perfectly between security camera cycles, using shadows to hide movement. It was professional-level harassment. Then Helen hosted a community safety meeting, where she painted us as dangerous outsiders who were attracting criminal attention. She stirred up the neighbors, made us out to be the threat. She was spinning a new narrative and it was working. The neighborhood started turning against us, but my cameras were still rolling, and Helen had no idea how much I'd captured. I had footage of her nephew, Tommy, slashing our tires at 3 a.m. I had Helen herself across the street, directing staged accidents like a mob boss running logistics. I had video after video of the same contractors being used again and again for emergency repairs, all generating huge insurance claims. And the smoking gun? I had footage of Helen accepting cash payments from her associate Tessa right there on her front porch. This wasn't just some local con. This was an organized criminal operation, complete with henchmen, hush money, and an airtight fraud ring. Judy, despite the risk to her career, couldn't hold back anymore. Her training kicked in. She began building a case in earnest, documenting every single detail with prosecutorial precision. She recognized the signs, the tactics, the pressure. This was racketeering-level intimidation, the kind of thing she'd spent years prosecuting in courtrooms across the country. Judy begins compiling a meticulous prosecutorial timeline connecting the dots of Helen's elaborate fraud scheme To stay on the safe side, she reaches out to a former colleague with some hypothetical questions about what would trigger federal jurisdiction. "I think I've stumbled into something huge," she tells her friend, choosing her words carefully. "But if I officially get involved, my career is over." That's when the tides slowly start to turn. People in the neighborhood, long silenced by fear, begin to speak up. An elderly resident, Mrs. Dawson, slips me a handwritten note. "Thank you for standing up to her. She stole 30 grand from my insurance by faking an accident in my driveway." Carlos takes the lead in organizing quiet meetings with others who've been targeted. Turns out, a dozen households in our neighborhood alone have suffered from Helen's orchestrated scams. Even her own nephew, Tommy, comes forward to Carlos privately. "My aunt's unhinged," he says. "I want out, but she said if I stop helping her, she'll rat me out for the crimes I already committed." The pressure starts splintering Helen's inner circle. Her main contractor's associate demands a bigger quota. "This is too hot," he says. Word is, feds are circling insurance fraud rings. Another accomplice, spooked by a flood of red flags from insurance companies, wants to go dark for a while. Tommy starts unraveling. "Aunt Helen, I can't keep doing this," he pleads. "What if we get caught? What if we go to jail?" Helen's response strips away any remaining illusion of morality. "You do exactly what I say," she snaps, "or you'll take the Fialonia for everything we've done." Then Helen makes what she thinks is her finishing move. "Someone breaks into our house. Judy's case files are destroyed. What's worse, it looks like someone tried to plant fake drug evidence here, clearly an attempt to frame us." That's right, Helen's now trying to paint us as drug criminals. She calls the cops and reports suspicious criminal behavior by a federal employee. She's weaponizing Judy's government position, using it to discredit her while simultaneously wiping out evidence of her own crimes. Seeing the aftermath of Judy's law books torn to shreds, years of case files and ruins, something inside me finally snaps. "Enough," I say, filled with a rage I didn't know I had. "We're not leaving. This is our home, and I'll be damned if some sociopath forces us out." Because honestly, I don't care how dangerous she is. I don't care about her crooked cop friends or her web of scams. No one messes with my family and walks away. Judy stares at the planted drug evidence, and I watch her transformation. The scared, suspended agent vanishes. What's left is the relentless prosecutor she's always been. "You want to play federal crimes?" she says, her voice ice cold. "Let's play federal crimes." She's done hiding. The hunter is back and Helen has no idea what's about to hit her. But Helen, ever overconfident, doesn't stop. She rehearses her victim speech in front of a mirror. "Yes, I caught that too on my security cams. Officers," she practices tearfully, "I'm just a concerned neighbor reporting a federal employee's threats and illegal investigations." She really believes no one will believe Judy over here, the so-called respectable community leader. Then she makes the phone call that will ultimately destroy her. Helen dials 911 with a carefully constructed pack of lies. "I need to report Federal Agent Judy Cooper," she says. "She's been extorting neighbors, running illegal surveillance, and threatening to plant evidence. I've got proof. Witnesses, texts. It's all fabricated, but she delivers it with award-winning drama. Her voice shakes. Her performance is flawless. She even shows fake screenshots she clearly sent to herself from burner phones, acting like they're messages from Judy. But Helen's fatal flaw? Her ego. She gets too caught up in the performance, a broken bar, and that's when she makes her biggest mistake. Helen gets so wrapped up in her story, so caught up in making it sound believably, that she starts piling on details that will ultimately come back to destroy her. "She flashed some kind of federal badge at me," she claims breathlessly, and bragged that she specializes in taking down insurance fraud. "She said she's put away hundreds of people just like me. She threatened to dig into all my claims and frame anyone who didn't cooperate. She has access to federal databases and could fabricate anything she wants." Every exaggerated word pushes her deeper into her own trap. But Helen is so intoxicated by the sound of her own performance, she doesn't even realize she's accidentally admitting to crimes. The officers are listening closely. Misconduct by a federal agent is a very serious matter, and these are seasoned cops who've handled some intense cases over the years. Still, I catch them giving each other brief glances as something about Helen's overly theatrical delivery just doesn't sit right with them. They stay professional, methodical at taking notes, asking neutral questions, but I can see their wheels turning. Helen's story is just a little too dramatic, a little too polished. Meanwhile, Judy and I say nothing. We just stand back and let Helen run her mouth, and judge as she's not the same woman who's been suspended and defeated for the last few months. She's calm, still, focused, like she's watching a suspect spill their guts in a federal interrogation room. The prosecutor in her is wide awake, quietly observing as Helen builds the case against herself. After nearly 20 minutes of this theatrical monologue, yes, 20 full minutes of wild, elaborate accusations, Helen finally pauses, looking smug and satisfied, convinced she's won. That's when Judy steps forward, not nervously, not defensively, but with this quiet, commanding confidence that immediately shifts the energy in the air. The officers turn to her, clearly expecting panic, maybe some attempt to deny or explain, but instead, Judy speaks with a calm, measured tone that slices through the tension like a scalpel. "Officers," she begins evenly, "thank you for responding so quickly. Mrs. Thompson has just made several very specific claims regarding my background in prosecuting insurance fraud, and she's absolutely right about one thing." Silence. You could hear a pin drop. Helen beams like she's already won the war. The cops wait to hear what comes next. Even I hold my breath. I have no clue what Judy's about to do. Then, with slow, deliberate motion, Judy reaches into her bag and pulls out her federal wallet. The way she does it is steady, precise. It's clear she's done this 1,000 times. She flips it open with smooth, almost theatrical timing, and the sunlight catches the badge at just the right angle. It gleams like it was forged by the gods themselves. There it is, an official Department of Justice badge, clear identification, and in bold print at her division, Insurance Crime Unit, active credentials, proof that everything Helen just accused her of at Broken Bar is exactly what Judy's trained to investigate. And now, Helen has accused a certified federal agent of the very crimes Helen herself has been committing for years. The shift in Helen is instant and dramatic. Time seems to freeze. Her smug grin fades. Confusion sets in, followed by creeping realization of Broken Bar and then full-on panic. Her face drains of all color. She stares at the badge like it's a death warrant. Her knees buckle slightly and she grabs the fence for support. You can see the crash of reality hitting her in waves, a one ugly truth after another slamming into her. Judy isn't some office bureaucrat she can bully or outwit. She's a specialized federal prosecutor, and now, she's a witness to Helen's own confession. Helen has just handed her entire criminal operation on a silver platter of Broken Bar to the one person most equipped to take her down. She can't breathe. She can't speak. She's frozen, paralyzed, trapped in the worst moment of her life. The woman who's spent years terrorizing families, blackmailing neighbors, and scamming insurance companies just fell off a metaphorical cliff. The police officers immediately snap to attention. They recognize a real badge when they see one. Officer Parker even removes his hat in a quiet gesture of respect. "Ma'am," he says, clearly rattled, "we had no idea you were with the Department of Justice." This changes the entire context of this complaint. The entire tone of the room shifts. Helen is no longer the innocent whistleblower. She's just confessed to federal crimes, in front of police officers, while trying to smear the name of a federal agent. And Judy? She's fully locked in now, clinical, composed, deadly precise. "Officers," she says, her voice cool and unshakable, "I need to clarify a few things immediately. First, I am currently on suspension from the Dodge pending review of an unrelated issue. However, my credentials remain active, and I remain a sworn federal officer. Second, the accusations Mrs. Thompson just made against me, knowingly false and highly specific, constitute a federal offense. Third, her detailed awareness of insurance fraud methods strongly suggests direct, personal involvement." Her words hang in the air like a trap finally snapping shut. Fourth, Judy continues with measured calm, "I have extensive documentation outlining a large-scale insurance fraud ring involving staged vehicle collisions, falsified claims, and coordinated extortion. The operation spans multiple states and involves several insurers, firmly placing this under federal jurisdiction. Helen opens her mouth to respond, but all that comes out is panicked stammering. I didn't know a broken bar. I was just a broken bar. This whole thing is a huge mistake. A broken bar, she fumbles, her voice barely audible. But Officer Parker cuts her off sharply, his voice flat with authority. Ma'am, federal complaints cannot be withdrawn after being formally reported to law enforcement. Filing a false report with federal officers is a felony. The jaws of the legal system have closed and Helen is squarely in them. Judy presses on with prosecutorial clarity, her tone clinical and unwavering. The available evidence indicates a pattern of organized fraud, counterfeit documentation, criminal conspiracy, and repeated acts of witness intimidation. These are not minor infractions, they are federal offenses. Furthermore, Mrs. Thompson's own account of how staged accidents are carried out directly implicates her in criminal activity. I recommend this case be escalated to a full federal investigation immediately. And here's the kicker. Judy still holds her federal credentials even during her suspension. She simply can't act on them without approval. But Helen, of course, doesn't know that. She believes she's just confessed to the one person she should have stayed far away from, an expert in exactly the crimes she commits. She thought she was clever. She thought she could bully her way through it. Instead, she's just locked herself into a federal case she has no way out of. Instead of local charges that a good attorney might have negotiated down, Helen is now staring straight down the barrel of serious federal prison time. The woman who used fear and manipulation to control an entire neighborhood is now utterly powerless against someone who knows every legal lever to pull. Judy delivers the final blow with icy precision. You did your research on me, she says coldly, but clearly not well enough. Yes, I work for the Department of Justice. Yes, my job is to investigate and prosecute federal crimes. And yes, my specialty is catching criminals who stage fake accidents for insurance money. The irony here is staggering. She pauses, letting that sink in. I wasn't even trying to get involved. I'm suspended. I was keeping my distance. But instead of walking away, you made the mistake of provoking me. You filed false charges against the federal agent best equipped to dismantle your entire operation. Her voice lowers, almost with grim satisfaction. Congratulations, Mrs. Thompson. You just handed me the perfect case to get reinstated. But Helen's nightmare isn't over. In fact, this is just the beginning, and what comes next is poetic justice. Fast forward 6 months. Yes, federal cases often take time, but when a prosecutor receives a case that's practically gift-wrapped with confessions, documents, and witnesses, things can move surprisingly fast. And Judy's colleagues at the Dodge, they were ecstatic. A rock-solid case like this doesn't come round often. They moved quickly and brought Judy back early to lead the prosecution herself. Turns out, when the country's leading expert in insurance fraud happens to expose a major crime ring in her own neighborhood, her previous suspension becomes a distant memory. Helen's empire collapses almost overnight. FBI forensic accountants uncover over $1 million in fraudulent payouts, all tied to orchestrated accidents across several neighborhoods. The money trail, spread over years and crossing multiple states, locks in federal jurisdiction without question. All of Helen's shell companies are seized, her bank accounts frozen. The woman who once strutted through the community as if she were untouchable suddenly finds herself under siege from the full weight of the federal government. Her criminal network crumbles like wet paper. Her closest accomplice, faced with decades in prison, immediately flips and starts talking. She threatened my family if I didn't help stage accidents, he confesses during his FBI debriefing. I never wanted to hurt anyone, but she said if I refused, she'd ruin me. The contractor she bribed, they spill everything. She forced us to pay her a cut of every job, one admits. If we didn't, she said she'd report us for tax fraud. Even Tommy, her own nephew, breaks down. I just needed money for college, he sobs. She promised it'd be easy, said no one would ever find out. But when I tried to quit, she threatened to pin everything on me. And then came the community. One by one, neighbors who had lived in fear finally came forward. Carlos's elderly mother stood in court and said, "For the first time in 5 years, I feel safe." That woman stole my husband's insurance money and made me too afraid to speak. Mrs. Dawson, the quiet neighbor who once left me that anonymous warning, testified through tears. She broke my trust in everyone. I thought I was living among criminals, but really, it was just one predator, hiding behind fake smiles and threats. 18 families in total came forward. 18 sets of detailed stories and evidence. A community, finally free to speak. Helen was hit with a list of federal charges that would make a mafia boss sweat: racketeering and organized fraud, multiple counts of submitting false insurance claims, conspiracy and coercion, lying to federal agents, tampering with and intimidating witnesses. She was facing decades, and she knew it. Her lawyer, after reviewing the evidence, the financial records, the witness statements, the recordings, and her own words to the police, didn't even try to spin it. "Your Honor," he told the federal judge, "in my 3 decades of law, I have never encountered such overwhelming evidence against a defendant. My client wishes to accept responsibility and plead for leniency." But federal judges aren't known for going soft on long-running fraudsters who prey on innocent families. And Helen? She was absolutely obliterated in court. She was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison even after a plea deal. As part of her plea deal, Helen is ordered to cooperate fully, repay every cent she stole plus interest, and accept the consequences. She receives a permanent ban from working in insurance or any financial sector. Every asset tied to her schemes is seized. Her home, cars, jewelry are gone. Anything bought with illicit funds is claimed by the government. With a federal felony conviction, she also forfeits her civil rights. The woman who once ruled an entire community through fear and manipulation is left with nothing but a prison cell and an orange jumpsuit. Judy's professional comeback, by contrast, is nothing short of triumphant. The case quickly becomes legendary within the Dodge. Her reputation is not only restored, it's elevated. The internal investigation against her is dropped instantly. After all, it's difficult to criticize someone who, while suspended, uncovered and helped dismantle a massive criminal enterprise. She's promoted to senior division chief, earning praise from federal agencies across the country. She's even named Prosecutor of the Year in the Dodge's annual newsletter. Soon, Judy is giving keynote talks nationwide, educating other federal agents on detecting suburban fraud networks. She signs a book deal titled The Neighborhood Prosecutor: How I Busted a Criminal Mastermind in My Own Backyard. Our community undergoes a complete transformation. Corliss is elected as the new, legitimate president of the HOA with full transparency and unanimous support. Monthly financial disclosures are posted online for all residents to view. New bylaws include term limits and provisions for immediate recall. But the most important change? A zero-tolerance policy for threats or intimidation. Any attempts at bullying are reported to authorities without hesitation. Property values rebound by 25% in 6 months, making us one of the fastest rising neighborhoods in the entire county. Even my marriage to Judy grows stronger, tempered and fortified by everything we've endured. One quiet evening, I ask her, "Why didn't you talk to me about what you were going through at work?" She sighs, looking down for a moment. "I always saw myself as the strong one, the capable one. When I got suspended, I didn't know how to admit that I was struggling. I was ashamed." I take her hand and say, "That doesn't make me love you less. It makes me love you more." And watching you dismantle Helen's entire operation with surgical legal skill, that might be the hottest thing I've ever seen. She laughs. "Federal prosecutions turn you on?" I grin. "My wife being a total badass definitely does." 6 months later, poetic justice comes full circle. Helen's seized home is auctioned off to help pay restitution to her victims. The buyer, a young FBI agent working in financial crimes. During the neighborhood welcome, he jokes, "This place is perfect for me. I hear you folks have excellent fraud detection rates." Even our real estate market has a sense of humor now. One evening, we're sitting on our porch watching neighborhood kids ride bikes and neighbors chat across fences like old friends. Judy turns to me and says, "You know what Helen's biggest mistake was?" I shrug. "Going after the wrong federal prosecutor?" Judy smiles. She forgot the #1 rule of any good con: know your target. 5 minutes of research into what I actually did for a living could have saved her 18 years in prison. Think she learned anything? I ask. She smirks. She's got plenty of time in federal prison to brush up on her research skills. But Judy's story doesn't end there because there are more Helens out there, and Judy Cooper has become their worst nightmare. Fast forward again. Life has fallen into a calm, satisfying rhythm, is something I never thought possible after what Helen put us through. So where's our former neighborhood tyrant now? Helen Thompson is currently scrubbing toilets and folding laundry in a federal penitentiary, dressed in prison orange. Inmate gossip has branded her as the woman dumb enough to scam a federal prosecutor. Even among hardened criminals, that earns her ridicule. Murderers and drug dealers shake their heads at her complete lack of foresight. There's something beautifully ironic about that. Meanwhile, Judy's career is on fire in the best possible way. She's pioneered a fraud detection framework dubbed the Thompson Method. Yes, named after Helena Judy's idea of poetic justice. She's now training federal agents across the country, helping them identify the same tactics Helen used. She's served as an expert witness in 47 other cases involving insurance fraud rings. And guess what? I design all of her training materials and presentation visuals. Suddenly, my freelance design business is booming with law enforcement clients. For once, my job sounds cool at parties. Our neighborhood has completely turned around. Carlos, a former military and natural-born leader, runs the HOA with integrity. Monthly financial reports are posted online. Term limits are enforced. And the focus has shifted entirely to real community building, not power hoarding. The once fearful residents now feel empowered. New families are moving in. Property values keep rising, and everyone knows the story of how we stood up to the tyrant and won. And that house Helen used to rule from, it finally sells it to a 20-something FBI agent working financial crimes, who chose our community for one reason: I heard you guys take scams seriously. I heard this neighborhood has top-tier crime detection rate. Tessa sounds perfect for someone in my field, the new guy says as he introduces himself. Turns out, he's an FBI financial crimes agent. Any place that manages to take down a criminal mastermind? Yeah, I figured it's good enough for me. Even our real estate market has developed a bit of a sense of humor after everything that happened. Judy and I often talk about how the worst chapter of our lives ended up being the turning point we never saw coming. One evening while we're flipping burgers at a neighborhood BBQ, she turns to me and says, "You know, Helen kind of did us a favor." She's not wrong. At the time, Judy was stuck in a stalled career, struggling with depression, and we barely knew the people living next door. Now she's thriving in her dream role. I'm busier than ever, and we're woven into the fabric of a truly supportive community. Helen set out to tear us apart and ended up making us stronger in every possible way. Meanwhile, the psychological crash Helen must be experiencing is probably brutal. She spent years ruling through fear, with police in her pocket, minions carrying out her orders, and residents too afraid to speak out. She built a little empire for herself, and now, she's a nobody, stripped of her home, her fortune, her influence. Even her name means nothing now. She's mocked in prison, her downfall a source of ridicule among people who've done far worse. When murderers and drug traffickers laugh at your criminal genius, you know you've hit rock bottom. That's what I call a full circle collapse. But what really satisfies me most isn't just that Judy beat Helena, it's that she redefined the entire game. Helen thought she could scare off some low-level government worker. What she didn't know was that she'd poked the wrong bear, a federal prosecutor who turned Helen's criminal playbook into a national case study. In the end, Helen practically handed Judy everything she needed: a high-profile win, a restored reputation, a promotion, and expert status across the country. In a twisted way, Helen was working for Judy all along, but she just didn't realize it. And the ripple effect? It's still growing. Judy's work on the case inspired prosecutors nationwide to dig deeper into suburban fraud. Since then, 3 more major rings have been exposed using her investigative framework, the Thompson Method, ironically named after Helen herself. Helen wanted to be remembered as a force to be feared. Instead, she's become the cautionary tale that's helping law enforcement clean house. Her name now echoes as a warning, not a legacy. Judy and I came out of this ordeal with a bond stronger than I ever imagined. We faced down a sociopath and walked away better for it. These days we joke about surviving the trial of Karen, though I could have done without the dead rat someone left in our mailbox. Still, you get the point. Even the local kids have turned Helen's story into a sort of urban legend. They call her the insurance witch and dare each other to pass her old house at night. Parents even use her as a life lesson. Don't lie, or you'll end up like Helen Thompson. If she knew, it would absolutely drive her insane. The woman who demanded respect is now the punchline to childhood dares. Then one night, Judy gets a familiar text that brings a certain sparkle to her eyes. It's from the FBI office in Phoenix. "Agent Cooper, we've got another Helen situation. New scam, same type of predator. Can you consult?" She turns to me, grinning. "Looks like I'm about to get busy again." That sparkle means she's found a new target. Somewhere out there, another would-be neighborhood tyrant is about to find out why you never, ever mess with Judy Cooper. I imagine Helen lying awake in her cell, endlessly replaying everything that went wrong. She had it all: dirty cops, scared victims, a well-oiled operation. But she made one fatal mistake. She never vetted her targets. She saw a federal employee and assumed weakness. She didn't bother to check that Judy's specialty was precisely the crime Helen built her empire on. That's like a cyber thief trying to hack the NSA director's laptop. As I wrap up this story, Judy and I sit on the front porch, watching kids laugh and play while neighbors swap stories over the fence. The American dream Helen tried to exploit is alive and well, restored to what it was always meant to be: a safe, thriving community where good people can live without fear. And Judy, she's heading into her next Cassie, one that's going to challenge everything she learned taking down Helen Thompson. Funny how it all started with one woman who thought she could outsmart the quiet neighbor across the street, without realizing that neighbor was a federal prosecutor with years of experience dismantling insurance fraud. Helen dug her own grave the moment she underestimated her mark. From her pathetic prep work, to that unforgettable moment she froze at the sight of Judy's Dodge badge, to the 18 years she's now spending in a federal prison, it's a masterclass in how not to pick your targets. Helen thought she was brilliant. She had a complex scam, a loyal crew, and a whole neighborhood under her thumb. But in the end, she saw a government worker and assumed paper pusher. What she didn't see was the nightmare of every insurance fraudster in the country. So here's the moral: do your research, really, because sometimes, karma doesn't just come knocking. Sometimes, it shows up with a federal badge and decades of courtroom wins ready to dismantle your entire life. Thanks for riding along with this wild journey from Ya Stories. If you liked this tale of epic justice, hit that like button. I'm Michael, and I'll catch you in the next video. Until then, stay safe out there.